Welcome to Inside Scoop Live, the podcast where indie authors get personal, sharing insights about their books, their writing journeys, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt, and I invite you to join me for engaging conversations with both debut indie authors and seasoned veterans. Whether you're looking for your next great read or a bit of inspiration, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Chaz Holesworth is here to talk about the first book in his memoir series, Life and How to Live It. We'll also chat about his new poetry collection, When the Light is Mine, and Chaz will share a few poems from the book as well. Before we get started, though, here's the inside scoop on the author. Chaz Holesworth writes from the gritty edge of lived experience. Growing up in Philadelphia amid poverty, addiction, and religious extremism, he turned pain into poetry and truth into art. His memoir and poetry collection lay bare decades of survival, love, and loss, revealing the fault lines between faith and despair and power and vulnerability. Now living outside Philadelphia with his wife and dog, Chaz continues to write with raw honesty and a quiet hope that refuses to die. You can learn more about Chaz Holesworth and his work at chazholesworthbooks.com. Well, hi, Chaz. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It's a true pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your memoir? What is Life and How to Live It about, and what inspired you to share your story?
Life and How to Live It is a memoir. It's the first one. I'm planning a series about my strange, tragic, and sometimes joyful life I have been given. So this is the first volume of it. I was inspired to write this in 2019 when my sister was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer that took her 4 months after she was diagnosed. She was my only sibling.
Oh,
She was living about 8 hours away in Maine, and I live in Philly. So I would have to travel a lot to go see her and take my mom up to go see her. And when I got the call the end was near, I made the journey to the town where she was in hospice. And something stopped the cancer. I got to see her gagging for breath, and a few minutes later, she was gone, and her eyes opened and seemed to be looking at me in a room with her kids, her husband, and our mom. Her eyes opened and kind of said to me, "You're the only one that knows how BS our life was, and only you get it."
mm.
My sister and I had a rough life, with our father being a longtime heroin addict, and our mother, due to that, became a devout, born-again Christian. So it was a lot of fighting and different contrasts of parenting, and we lived in total poverty for our entire childhood. I left the faith, but my sister stayed in it, mostly because she didn't have much of a choice. There wasn't many options for us. Education was very poor due to being born again Christians and being raised that way. Like, the schools only cared about the Bible, not so much about science or math. So when she died at her funeral, I was surrounded by these born again Christians in Maine. So it was them trying to bring me back into the fold over her untimely death. And I was turned off by their ways more than ever. So I went out drinking that night and had this epiphany that I had to do something with my story and my sister's story. I had to get out of my head no matter what it takes. So I got it out there. So I've been writing it since 2019. I decided to do volume because it was turning into a War and Peace size book. And I'm nobody, so no one's going to read that. So I'm doing at least 4 or maybe 5 volumes of this life that was handed to me and how I lived it. That's what inspired it.
Okay. I like the idea of doing volumes like that so you could focus on different parts of your life.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's not a 1,000-page tome.
Easier to read for people.
Absolutely. Now, your book, it's a memoir, so of course it feels incredibly honest, but it's almost like you're talking directly to the reader. What made you decide to tell it that way, exactly as it happened, without softening the edges?
Well, when I started writing it, I decided to write it in a way that I talk. And I told these stories of mine over the years. People always love to hear these crazy stories I had. So I was always good at telling it like it happened. I'm kind of honest to a fault. And one thing I try to avoid is to be fake. I want to be as real as possible. So I knew I had to tell it the way it happened and to show how bad it was and how I felt about it all and how I learned to live. So that's why I did it that way.
Okay. Yeah. And using your authentic voice, that makes sense, especially for a memoir.
It's the only way I know how to tell these stories. This is what
Right.
happened.
Right. Now, you grew up in Kensington, Pennsylvania, and as you mentioned, surrounded by hardship and chaos. And I guess when you look back at it now, what stands out to you most about that world and the way it
Mhm.
shaped who you are?
Well, so Kensington is a neighborhood in Philadelphia that seems to be looked over or lost between the cracks. It's always been that way.
Hmm.
But when I lived there in the 80s and 90s, it was full of gangs, drug dealers, and crime, prostitution, just a lower class way of life. Back before the 80s, there was factory jobs there, so a lot of people lived in Kensington, but then the factory jobs started to close in the 80s, and everybody that had those jobs had to move away, and then more riffraff came in, and the drugs came in, and drug dealers took over the neighborhood, so it was really, really bad. I guess the one thing that shaped me the most was it was rock bottom growing up. So I always had this sense of knowing I couldn't settle for it. Like, it was not the life for me. It was the motivation I needed to keep going. If I stayed put, it would have either killed me or I would have been just another bum from the neighborhood. And that's a
Mm.
reference from the movie Rocky, which was filmed in Kensington.
You knew there was more to life for
Yeah.
you.
And I always
Yeah.
wanted more. So I always wanted more. And then I just knew that this was so bad that I had to get out. That's what kind of shaped me.
Yeah. I mean, you could also, make the case for, well, it can only get better from here, right?
Right, right. Well, some ways in my story, it gets a little worse, but I get through that too somehow in the other books.
So we've got your authentic voice and, you tell the story in the way you know how to. And despite everything, you must have a sense of humor because there's humor woven in throughout your story. Do you think being able to laugh at that pain helped you stay grounded or helps you now?
Yeah, definitely. With all the terrible things that happened to me, I always had this wicked and kind of sort of dark sense of humor that comes with living such a life. It's a point where so many bad things happen eventually, like the time that it happened, you're like, I don't know, here we go again. So I even talk about how humor was an escape for me in my youth. Like, I really loved the skit comedy show Saturday Night Live in the early 90s, and it
Hmm.
was something that was a comfort to me. I love music and I would cry to my favorite songs, but I would also love to laugh and tears of joy coming out when I laughed so hard that everything that was wrong in my life would cease to bother me for a moment. So Saturday Night Live and comedy's always been a big part of my upbringing and my personality. Like, I like to laugh, I like to make people laugh. So that's why I think comedy just really is a way to release those aggressions or that angst and depression that one has. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same can be said for music, which
Yeah.
music is a big part of your life and almost like a lifeline when nothing else made sense. What is it about the songs that you connected with that helped you survive?
So one can only laugh so much, especially when things were really tough and Saturday Night Live wasn't on. So popular
Yeah.
music of the 90s was my comfort and my motivation. I wasn't allowed to listen to the radio or secular music over the extreme version of Christianity my mother decided was the best way to raise me in. And we didn't have cable or MTV, so there was no real way for me to hear music that was popular at all. And the Christians that raised me still had this fear of rock music being satanic, that I would be possessed by demons if I listened to the Beatles or anything that wasn't glorifying God.
Yeah.
So by chance, I was on a vacation with a Christian family in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and I heard the song that literally changed my life. It was Losing My Religion by REM.
Mm.
I was at this rec center, and that was at the vacation spot we were at, and this kid there put it on a jukebox, and I was half scared, but also intrigued. It didn't change me overnight from the born again programming that I had, but the seed was planted. So later on that summer, I saw the band on a rerun of Saturday Night Live, and I was so intrigued by the singer's dancing and passionate voice that I was hooked. Because I didn't have the access to the song and didn't want my mother to know or the people at the church that I was going down this path of liking rock music, so I had to keep it to myself. I would have to rely on hearing the song in stores when I was out shopping with my mom or in cars with relatives when they had the radio on. That was until the Christmas of '91 when my mom's mom, who wasn't a born again Christian, bought me a cheap radio. And after that, I had the world of music in my ears. I would listen to the radio when my mom wasn't around or at night with my cheap earphones with one ear open to make sure my mom wasn't nearby. And this is when I got to record music off the radio and had Losing My Religion finally on tape.
Nice.
The song's title was a bit sacrilegious, and the lyrics had a bounce of it too, but I never thought it was about losing my religion, literally, even though it was a song that sort of had me lose my religion.
Yeah.
I saw it as a comfort song. I saw it as the singer, the artist being there for someone and doing whatever it takes to do to be there, AKA losing their religion, which is a Southern term for being at wit's end. Then the lyrics really made me feel like that someone knew how I was feeling, especially the lyric, every whisper of every waking hour, I'm choosing my confessions, which
Mm,
is how I felt every day. I was always thinking I was doing something wrong. Then after I became a huge fan of the band that shaped my life, other songs were comforts, like Everybody Hurts and Drive off their album Automatic for the People, which is still one of my favorites. And once I had the whole entire catalog, it wasn't just comfort songs, but I learned things that I would never known about, like political things like the Iran Contra scandal and who Andy Kaufman was, all from REM songs. They also had fun songs, songs to inspire me, to keep me going, like Losing My Religion. But there were other ones that were just a call to action to keep trying and not give up. Like there's a song called Get Up off of Green, and Michael Stipe literally says, Get up. I know life is hard. So that was kind of like when I was in bed and I didn't want to get out of bed, I was like, Get up. I know life is hard. Get out there, do something.
yeah.
And then there was Tori Amos. She was a big influence on me. She was raised also in an overwhelming religion, and she wrote songs about it. Like the song Crucify has a line where it says, I got enough guilt to start my own religion. And that was me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I got into music at a good time where popular music was changing, and there was a lot of bands that were writing songs about isolation and depression. And it was a good way to focus my feelings in a positive reaction to the negative things around me. Bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Radiohead were gaining popularity, and they were all just really, really important to me. They still are.
Yeah. That was such a great time in music. I don't care what generation you're from.
Right.
I mean, I think everybody likes that era in music.
It almost felt like another 60s. Like
Yeah.
everything was changing, like, all the bands, rap, pop, rock, it was just all so different and good. Good time.
When you were talking, it reminded me of just, and just being alone in the house and playing your favorite songs over and over again,
Yep,
full blast, and just getting lost in it. I mean, what a great feeling?
it is.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about your mother's religious devotion, and that's a huge part of your story. And
Yeah.
you write about wrestling with faith and hypocrisy. And where do you stand with your spirituality today?
Oh boy. Alright, so I talk about this in a book. I knew about the time I was 13 and 14, this form of Christianity wasn't for me. I knew I wanted some sort of normal life. I had a sense of another religion because my dad was still the Catholic,
Hmm.
but he was by this time was pretty much always passed out or running around the neighborhood getting drugs. So he really wasn't of an influence. But I did have that sense of another form of Christianity besides my mom's. So I was fine with being a Christian, thinking that God was there and all, had a plan for me. I was fine with thinking every version of Christianity was the same and we're all Christians and we're all going to go to heaven. But the born again Christians kept pushing me and trying to get me to conform to their side of the cross so much it pushed me too far, and I was so turned off that I never went back into any of it. Like, I'm an atheist when it comes to man-made religions. I thought and read about religions that we've made up, and none of it really makes sense to me. I don't think that any of them got it. They are all looking for an absolute, but it's still contained and boxed in with our limitations. Like, I mean, there's obviously something infinite that's been there before us, and it'll be there after us. It might be energy, or it's something we have no idea what it could be.
Right.
Either way, we try to concept this thing and give it human traits and even a sex and a male sexual parts, like all because men are constructing this infinite thing with what they know. Men are in charge. Men have anger and pride. So this infinite thing they call God has to have it too. We
Yeah.
have kingdoms, we have thrones, so this God must have it too. It all kills the imagination of what it is and boxes this infinite thing in. They monopolize this God or the spiritual essence our brains are looking for. I mean, I would say I'm very skeptical to anything that is called spiritual, since I don't even know if I believe in spirits or souls, or if they're just made up by ancient men who didn't know the earth wasn't the center of the universe or didn't use toilet paper. Um, like, I'm an optimist. I've always been. So I hope there's something to it all. And maybe one day mankind will know about this thing they label God. But until then, the closest I am to spiritual is knowing we are all in this thing called life and existence together. And I believe empathy we have for each other is the glue that holds us together. And that empathy is something to believe in and fight for.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Yeah.
Thank you.
You also open up about questioning your identity and sexuality, really in an environment that's not very accepting or wasn't very accepting. How did you find the strength to embrace who you are?
So, I mean, growing up in Kensington and growing up probably anywhere, and especially back then, you try to squash your identity, and my identity or my attempts to show who I was attacked by all those around me, whether it was my relatives, my father, my sister, the people in the neighborhood, the religion constantly trying to push me back on what they wanted me to believe in, trying to stop me from who I was and what I wanted to be. I was an extremely sensitive kid, and the mindset of Kensington and the adult figures who raised me was toughen up and grow up.
Mm,
They would always say it wasn't that bad, even though I was smart enough to know it was that bad, and how the world is tough and I need to be tougher. My dad's dad would always try and tell me these things like people in the world aren't my friends and how I need to keep them all at arm's length. But I knew that I wasn't that, at least not yet. I had all these emotions and I loved my fellow man so much that I wanted to embrace everything. I wanted to meet everybody and I wanted to be sensitive. I wanted to stay sensitive. It was Michael Stipe, Mariam, and the music that I love that gave me courage to be myself because they were different. They weren't the typical macho tough guy. So I had them. So I do admit that growing up, because of my born again programming, I was homophobic. I thought homosexuality was a sin. I
mm,
thought they were going to go to hell. But as I got older and wiser, I reversed that thought pattern. By the time I was 15, I was over that bigotry and wanted to help those that were born gay feel safe. I would go out of my way to make sure they had a safe place. And this was all mostly because of Michael Stipe. He was
wow.
bisexual, and he's also a sensitive male that's strong in his own way, but not that typical male dominant way. And that's how I embrace myself and my identity.
Yeah, yeah. Not the toxic
Yeah,
masculinity.
toxic masculinity. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, the title of your book, Life and How to Live It, after an REM song, the way you use it as the title of your book kind of feels like a challenge or at least a declaration. What does that phrase mean to you?
Okay, so it definitely is not a self-help book, so don't take it like that. So, yeah, it's from an REM song. In the lyric, Michael Stipe says, "If I write a book, it would be called Life and How to Live It." And it's about this man in their town of Athens, Georgia, who had a house, and he decided to make his house completely different on 2 sides. So one side would have a radio and different kind of books and art. The other one would have a TV and different kind of art and books, so that when he got tired of one side, the other served him best.
Uh-huh.
And he published this book called Life and How to Live It, but he never did anything with them. So, but then when he died, they went to his house and they found all these books. And so that's where Michael Stipe wrote the story about. But I take it as my life was sort of two-sided because I had the father, hermetic, worldly, demonized by the Christians. And then I had my Christian mother that was always trying to push her religious way. And so I had this both sides, and it's just about what side's going to serve me best, which is one of the lines in the song.
Mm,
So I take the line life and how to live it as not really literally, but like this is how I live my life. And I'm just inviting you all to read about it. Whatever you got to do, a book, read it. This is how I live my life. No filter. So that's how I look at it.
okay. Yeah. Your story touches on poverty, trauma, self discovery, but also obviously about resilience. You have a lot of resilience.
Yeah.
What do you hope readers take away from your story?
Yeah. So I want people to get a sense of no matter how bad it is, you can keep going. I want to get across what music had done for me with my memoir and my poetry book that I self-published this year. I wanna comfort and make people feel like, yeah, you're not alone, but I also wanna entertain people. Like, I've always wanted to make people laugh and feel something.
Hmm.
So, I want this story and the other ones that I'm gonna publish not to show you might have it bad too, but you should never give up. but I also want to tell my story in a way that it's fun and creates an emotional response.
Right. You mentioned that you oftentimes just sit down and let the words kind of pour out, but also at the same time, the writing feels very focused and deliberate. What happens for you when you sit down and write? What happens during that process? And what does writing give you that maybe nothing else can?
So when it comes to the memoir, it was something I felt like I had to do. So I just kept writing any chance I got. And it's actually when I started writing this story when the pandemic hit. So the only thing I did was write, and I'm an essential worker, so I worked a lot and wrote all the time. So I got through a lot of it because there was no concerts or baseball games or really bars open. So I just got a lot out in that year. When I did that, that was a different way of thinking because I was reliving my past, and it did get hard at times thinking about bad things that happened to me that I didn't wanna think about, but I just felt like I had to do it, and once I got it out, I did feel better about the situation. It was therapeutic, but when it comes to writing poetry, that's where it just really is freedom. It's a world that I can control, and it's whatever I wanna do. There's nothing like it. Like, it feel like I'm doing something important, even if it's not important to anybody else. I feel more alive when I'm creating something, so that's
Right.
why.
Now, you mentioned poetry, and you do have a poetry book out, When the Light is Mine. Tell us a little bit about your poetry book.
Well, I started writing when I was 15 years old, and they weren't good at all. They were basic stuff. I would never read them to anybody. But as I was going through life and learning and feeling more, I started to craft a style that I guess you can call streams of consciousness way of writing. I just let it flow out of me. And then sometime in the later 90s or early 2000s, I started writing this way. And every time something happened to me or moved me, I would have this urge to write. And I would go and write on a used laptop and let the words flow out of me. And whatever popped in my mind, I just would type it down. Since I was mostly influenced by music and lyrics, some of the poems have a rhythm that is musically sort of. So I just kept writing and I still do. I never did much besides sending these poems to friends. But after I published my memoir last year, I started to think about putting most of my poems out there for people to read. So I self published it. It's 25 years of poetry that I've written. Some were written 25 years ago, some were written 3 months ago
Oh,
on all
wow.
different subjects, yeah, like religion, of course, society, politics, the faults in capitalism, and I end it all with a bunch of love poems.
Kinda just whatever was on your mind. You didn't set out to write, "I'm gonna write religion, I'm gonna write this, I'm gonna write that." It just kinda whatever was going on in
Yes.
your mind at that time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or if I saw something, like, if I was watching TV and I saw something I didn't like, I would get like, I had that little urge or that feeling of like, "Oh, I gotta get this out," and I would just start writing it.
Yeah. You talked a little before we were on the air about the difference between writing poetry and a memoir. What does poetry let you express that regular, prose doesn't or can't?
It's totally freedom. Like with the memoir, I stage structured. For some reason, I was born with a really good memory. So I remember a lot of what happened to me. So I tried my best to keep it to what really happened. I put my personality in there, my humor, but I also stayed restricted to what happened. But, with poetry, there's no limitations. I can go off and write what I think and feel, and it's freedom. So it's
Yeah.
writing
Yeah.
poetry is my mind on hyperdrive.
I love that. Yeah. Now, I guess from your collection, if you had to choose one poem that feels closest to who you are today, which one would that be and why?
Okay, I wrote this poem about a year ago. It's called Introvert Extrovert. It's a poem about what I think what's going on with society and capitalism, how people are taking advantage of it and how they try to sell us things that we don't need. And I just feel like it's also got a little sense of hope to it. And I believe it's kind of me in a nutshell. It's how I wrote this just a year ago. So it's how I still feel about things. It's a good way of how I see society and capitalism that's run amok when we let billionaires keep getting richer.
And I don't know if you want to read that one to us, but I was hoping that you could maybe close out our talk by reading one or two poems from When This Light Is Mine. Would you mind sharing with us?
I would absolutely love that. So my poetry is all about like how I see society and religion, politics, but it's also got a personal touch to it because I felt all this stuff. Like, so it was personal to me when I watch the rich getting richer and inequality still rampant. And so that's how I write. So this is called introvert, extrovert. Introvert, extrovert, take your pick. Depends on which wounds are to lick. Catch a cold from a demon's toads, and the wrath is just desserts. The will of the problem is greater than the solutions, which is why we'll never get it right. The slavers have a new waiver they impose, telling us to consume the status quo like it's the only option. We can't be left out. Fever is breaking, but the swine is on the rise. The kid is resilient, but he's got the stars in his eyes. Victims come in masses and they leave messes. The second we let our guard down is the second they come for our hearts, like wolves in hiding, like the devil they tried warning us of. Kill the messenger before the messenger can talk. Tell the same lies to keep us in circles, keep reaching for scheming pyramids, and keep us obsessed with fool's gold. Flying catches and platinum plastic jubilees. They're coming for our seconds and distracting us with flashy moments to suspend our grief. Never mind, the pearl is on detail, eyes moving rapidly as the songstress calms the dreamers who never learn. There'll be plenty more wounds to lick. Earth turns as it burns, but the profit margins are key. Poison kids with chemical spills. As Lenin said, smile as you kill. Nurture over nature. Poverty means peers are the law. They're choking on silver spoons while we fight for our plastic spork. Be all that you can be as long as your wealth is absolutely filthy. That's it.
Wow. Yeah,
Thank you.
wow. I could feel the personal aspect, and you hit on a number of relevant issues today. Nice.
Thank you very much. I try to write like how I like to read.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what makes it real. Thank you. Did you have another one you wanted to share?
All right. So I wrote this one. My best friend, who I mentioned a lot in the book, Eddie, he went down a bad road about 2 years ago. He was trying to save himself and he went into rehab and everything, but nothing was really working. So I wrote this about him. It's called Antichrists Prescribe Antidepressants. So here we go. The single cell organism has some explaining to do. Kill the messenger if the punchline is weak. Savor the texture since holy water isn't free. In the middle of the con, I realized being alone is what we have in common. Cocktail parties and who's guest lists. I've carved my attributes in sand when it's about to rain. Regrets are just reminders to learn from the mistakes. It's the short term memory loss that bears the escape. Still, I can't forget my own and will play them daily just to keep up with the reasons for my sins. Talking in rhymes to waste time and grieving for the loss of solitude. Take my word for it's subtle enough to be true. Take my liver for it's soaked enough in clear liquid to be used. Love is only as good as we let it be. Like talk shows and social news feeds. Like the girls who want nothing until they find something. Like the tone of a song that makes it all go away and lets that single cell organism get some beauty just rest for a change. That's it.
Wow. Have you shared that with your friend?
I did. Right after I wrote it, I sent it to him. That's what I did with a lot of my poetry. I didn't really do much with them. I just sent them to him, other friends I was close to through this journey of my life that I think would appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, wow, that's wonderful. Well, Chaz, did you have anything else you wanted to share with us today?
Both books are available on Amazon, so if you want to get
Okay.
them, they're out
Do you
there.
have a website?
I do. It's chazholesworthbooks.com. CHAZHOLESWORTH books.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, Chaz, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing a little bit about yourself and your work. It's very informative and enlightening, and I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you so much for joining me today for my interview with Chaz Holesworth, author of Life and How to Live It and When the Light is Mine. You can learn more about Chaz and his work at chazholesworthbooks.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.